Hey everyone, welcome to a very episode, the last of the year. I've been on YouTube for I think it's been 5 months now, and I showed you how I made my miniatures, and this year I made a lot of them. I did all these just for Turnip alone, and I thought I want to show you all my 4 Turnip armies that I finished this year. So you know the innocent man of the yellow cube, and you know my teeth guys, but these 2 armies are, I think, completely new to you. So I want to tell you a little bit about the armies. I plainly want to show them off to you, maybe inspire some of you to start your own turnip armies, because none of these were very hard to build or to paint, and they were a lot of fun. So let's take a closer look at all these armies. The first army I want to show you is one that you might already know from my very first video here on YouTube, the innocent man of the yellow cube. A whole army possessed by the infectious horror of the yellow cube. Ben from Apocrypha Now wrote an awesome supplement for the game Merkborg, in which the player can find said yellow cube and let chaos into their game. One thing that might happen is that the yellow cube infects your characters in the game and turns them into yellow cube zombies, and well, I decided to make a whole army be infected by that disgustingly awesome thing. Led into battle by the cube itself, these soldiers are dead set on turning the whole of Cyst, the continent TURNIP28 takes place in, into a cube-worshipping, she's-headed horde. I am still very happy with how this army turned out. The contrast between the black and yellow is very striking, and the uniformity of the miniatures and the bases makes for a real eerie look. I can only recommend making your own very simple turnip army. You can download Cubehead STLs from Apocrypha Now, but also other great geometrical skull hybrids by 4Hydra are available as STLs. I'll put a link to those in the video description. One army I haven't shown off on YouTube yet is the first army I've ever built for TURNIP28, the Order of the Golden Earth Apple. Since it has the word Erd in it, which is almost the German word for earth, you can probably tell there's a pretty big Elden Ring influence. At least the color scheme. The other obvious influence is the other big From Software franchise, Dark Souls. While the chef and brutes are pretty clear-cut TURNIP28 styled kit bashes of parry miniatures from different historical eras, the big guys are miniatures of the Dark Souls board game I heavily modified and bashed together. The big fella Smo became the ferocious man-eater, wielding a whole cannon in his hand, while his actual hammer became the cannon those 2 Rudy guys are operating. But my favorite miniature of the bunch is Lady Lupinia, a big knight atop the body of a decaying wolf. A rather fine melange of the turnip and Dark Souls aesthetics, if I do say so myself. I pretty much winged this whole army and built it together in one afternoon, taking a bit more time to paint it, but not much. These paint jobs are rough, but fit the TURNIP28 vibe so well. Which was very encouraging to me, as it was just pure bliss working quick and dirty and having great results in the end. It led me away from being hyper-focused on painting to the best of my abilities to just find interesting and fun things regarding my painting. A real turning point in the hobby for me. And because of that, I will forever love this army. That newfound freedom encouraged me to really plan out my next army and find my own voice in the turnip world. Simultaneously, I watched the movie Jabberwocky by Terry Gilliam, and it depicted a medieval royal city in pure chaotic, muddy and weird awesomeness. A kingdom on the brink of turning on its king and rising up. So I thought of that and came up with the Beetroot Witch, a former mistress, then advisor of the disgusting Rudy King. She gets more and more influence until she poisons the whole city with an unholy beetroot she had in her possession since she can remember. All the peasants, knights, lords and ladies turn into hideous, rooty, beady creatures that do her bidding. Even the king turning into a maggot, forever teased and ill-treated by his former court jester. But the crown jewel of the army is the huge lady Vermundra, sister to the half-knight, half-wolf lady Lupinia. She was such a joy to build and paint, especially the fleshy wings. Rules-wise, I wouldn't know how I would play her, but me and my gaming group allow the same freedom to the rules as we do to building and painting our armies. As long as it's fun, you are doing it correctly. Last but not least are my beloved teeth guys. I made a video about the whole building process of these as well. Initially I found a box of Warlord Games black powder soldiers for very cheap at my local game store and decided that I wanted to build the whole army just with these soldiers. In the end, the idea of teeth-headed guys was so much fun that I rummaged my bits box a bit more and added cavalry and a huge beast as well. That beast turned out very cool and I think it might be my favorite TURNIP28 miniature I kit bashed. After I finished the video, I was still so inspired by the army that I wrote some actual lore for them and named them the Gloom Wanderers of the Pale Orb. The whole army had a very melancholic vibe, and so I decided to come up with a story that reflects this sad and somber mood the monochrome color scheme was evoking in me. So here is sad lore read out by the wonderful Mangling Minis.
In the deepest and dampest corners of Sist, there are whispers of a tale that is older than the root itself. Long before the first musket was fired, or the first sabre poked a hole in a poor lad's neck, giants roamed the continent with heads bigger than any balloon, and feet as wide as the largest swamp one can imagine. One of these giants was called Dentura, and he was not only as big as a mountain, his heart was filled to the brim with so much boiling blood that it would rival any spouting volcano known to us mere mortal earth servants, for Dentura was in love. Every night Dentura lifted his enormous head, he searched the black sky, and when he found her, his soul rejoiced and his lips trembled. His eyes anchored on the greatest and most precious thing he'd ever known. Always changing in shape, from a small crescent to a full round orb, his ever-shining love waited for him in the sky and brought her light to him, and he adored her unmeasurably for that, for Dentura was deathly afraid of the night. But when he tried to reach her, to feel her pale light on his hands, he failed. No matter what he did, she stayed out of reach. He climbed up every mountain and amassed everything he could rip out of the ground and piled it up. But standing on his tower of rock, earth, trees and corpses, he realized he could never have her. Devastated and saddened to death, he leapt from an obelisk of despair, turned his head towards the earth, and with the greatest noise the continent had ever heard, the giant Dentura broke his skull and was no more. Aeons later, not only Dentura's millennia-old skull populated the ground, but also the corpses of thousands of soldiers, dying in an ever-perpetuating war started by a man with high aspirations and a very small body that no one remembers anymore. Sinking in the mud, they became entangled with the all-consuming root in the ground and fused with the bones of the giant. Most of them became little leeches on his enormous ribs, joints and bones. But those lucky, or rather cursed, few who latched onto the giant's teeth found themselves wiggling free of the colossal jaw and rising from the ground to find new life on the surface of Sist. Grotesque homunculi, with human bodies and giant teeth for heads, moving again and still grasping the weapons they held, all that these poor souls could feel was a cruel taste for war, and the never-ending sadness of Dentura that survived his leap into death. So now they look up into the sky and feel the unreachable love of the pale light at night, ever tortured but shedding no tears. The Gloom Wanderers of the Pale Orb, a silent army made from the saddest being Sist has ever known.
I hope you enjoyed taking a closer look at these little silly army men of TURNIP28. I haven't even played with all these armies, to be completely honest, but I had such a good time building and painting them, especially since this year I am sharing my hobby with all of you guys on Instagram and then here on YouTube, and I couldn't be happier for all your messages, likes, comments, all the support you gave me, all the love you showed me. I met new friends, I had such a blast, and I can't wait for next year when I'm gonna release a new game. I'm gonna be part of a new collab here on YouTube with other YouTubers. I'm very much looking forward to that. And of course, make new miniatures. I got some plans. I think it's gonna be cool, and the coolest stuff you can see on my Patreon way ahead of everyone else. So if you become a patron of mine, you can listen to the exclusive Ochre Brood podcast where I had Apocrypha Now on. I'm gonna have Mangling Minis and some more special guests, and you can listen to that podcast when you're a patron. And the newest patrons are Garrett Hartig, Trash Kitten, Amanda Drentwet, Banhus Miniatures, Mike Kiranek, and Kim Glut. Thank you all for your undying support. I hope you get into the new year healthy and well. Hope you have many happy festivities, whichever fest you are celebrating, and I hope to see you in the next episode. Thank you all so much. Bye bye.